Namaste, Dhanava Pranam. By the instruction and grace of our spiritual master, Om Vishnupad Paramahamsa Sripad Bhakti Madhava Puri Maharaj, today we are reading Srimad Bhagavatam, Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Text 32, Canto 2, The Cosmic Manifestation, Chapter 2, Text 32. Ite Shruti Te Nripa Veda Gite Tvayabhi Prishte Cha Sanatane Cha Ye Bhai Pura Brahmana Ahatusta Aradhito Bhagavan Vasudeva. Your Majesty, Maharaj Parikshit, know that all that I have described in reply to your proper inquiry is just according to the version of the Vedas, and it is eternal truth. This was described personally by Lord Krishna unto Brahma, with whom the Lord was satisfied upon being properly worshipped. Purport. The two different ways of reaching the spiritual sky and thereby getting emancipation from all material bondage, namely either the direct process of reaching the kingdom of God or the gradual process through the other higher planets of the universe, are set forth exactly according to the version of the Vedas. The Vedic versions in this connection are Yada Sarve Pramuchante Kamayesha Hrideshrika Ata Martyo Mrto Bhavat Yatro Brahma Samashnute from the Brihadaranyaka Upanishad 4.4.7 and Terachir Abhishambhavanti from Brihad Aranyaka Upanishad 6.2.15. Those who are free from all material desires, which are diseases of the heart, are able to conquer death and enter the kingdom of God through the archetype planets. These Vedic versions corroborate the version of Srimad Bhagavatam, and the latter is further confirmed by Shukadeva Goswami, who affirms that the truth was disclosed by the Supreme Personality of Godhead, Lord Sri Krishna, Vasudeva, to Brahma, the first authority on the Vedas. The disciplic succession holds that the Vedas were uttered by Lord Krishna to Brahma, by Brahma to Narada, and by Narada to Vyasadeva, and then by Vyasadeva to Shukadeva Goswami, and so on. So there is no difference between the versions of all the authorities. The truth is eternal, and as such, there cannot be any new opinion about the truth. That is the way of knowing the knowledge contained in the Vedas. It is not a thing to be understood by one's erudite scholarship or by fashionable interpretations of mundane scholars. There is nothing to be added and nothing to be subtracted because the truth is the truth. One has to accept, after all, some authority. The modern scientists are also authorities for the common man for some scientific truths. The common man follows the version of the scientist. This means that the common man follows the authority. The Vedic knowledge is also received in that way. The common man cannot argue about what is beyond the sky or beyond the universe. He must accept the versions of the Vedas as they are understood by the authorized disciplic succession. In Bhagavad Gita, also the same process of understanding the Gita is stated in the 4th chapter. If one does not follow the authoritative version of the Acharyas, he will vainly search out after the truth mentioned in the Vedas. Text 33. Nahyatonya Shibha Panta Vishatta Samshrita Viha Vasudeve Bhagavati Bhakti Yogo Yato Bhavit. For those who are wandering in the material universe, there is no more auspicious means of deliverance than what is aimed at in the direct devotional service of Lord Krishna. Purport. As will be clarified in the next verse, devotional service or direct bhakti yoga is the only absolute and auspicious means of deliverance from the grip of material existence. There are many indirect methods for deliverance from the clutches of material existence, but none of them is easy and auspicious as bhakti yoga. The means of Jnana Yoga and other allied disciplines are not independent in delivering a performer. Such activities help one to reach the stage of Bhakti Yoga after many, many years. In the Bhagavad Gita 12.5, it is said that those who are attached to the impersonal feature of the Absolute are liable to many troubles in the pursuit of their desired goal. And the empiricist philosophers searching after the absolute truth realize the importance of Vasudeva realization as all in all after many, many births. Bhagavad Gita 7.19. As far as yoga systems are concerned, it is always said in the Bhagavad Gita 6.47 that amongst the mystics who pursue the absolute truth, the one who is always engaged in the service of the Lord is the greatest of all. And the last instruction in Bhagavad Gita 18.66 advises fully surrendering unto the Lord, leaving aside all other engagements or different processes for self-realization and liberation from material bondage. And the purport of all Vedic literatures is to induce one to accept the transcendental loving service of the Lord by all means. As already explained in the texts of Srimad Bhagavatam in the first canto, either direct bhakti yoga or the means which ultimately culminate in bhakti yoga, without any tinge of fruitive activity, constitute the highest form of religion. Everything else is simply a waste of time for the performer. Srila Sridhar Swami and all other acharyas like Jiva Goswami agree that bhakti yoga is not only easy, simple, natural, and free from trouble, but is the only source of happiness for the human being. Text 34. Bhagavan Brahma Karchneyena Trir Anvicha Manishaya Tad Adhyavasyat Kutosto Ratir Atmanyato Bhavit. The great personality Brahma, with great attention and concentration of the mind, studied the Vedas 3 times, and after scrutinizingly examining them, he ascertained that attraction for the Supreme Personality of Godhead, Sri Krishna, is the highest perfection of religion. Purport. Sri Sukadeva Goswami is referring to the highest Vedic authority, Lord Brahma, who is the qualitative incarnation of Godhead. The Vedas were taught to Brahmaji in the beginning of the material creation. Although Brahmaji was to hear Vedic instructions directly from the personality of Godhead in order to satisfy the inquisitiveness of all prospective students of the Vedas, Brahmaji, just like a scholar, studied the Vedas 3 times, as generally done by all scholars. He studied with great attention, concentrating on the purpose of the Vedas, and after scrutinizingly examining the whole process, he ascertained that becoming a pure, unalloyed devotee of the Supreme Personality of Godhead, Sri Krishna, is the topmost perfection of all religious principles. And this is the last instruction of Bhagavad Gita directly presented by Personality of Godhead. The Vedic conclusion is thus accepted by all acharyas, and those who are against this conclusion are only Vedavad Ratas, as explained in Bhagavad Gita 2.42. Text 35. Bhagavan sarva bhuteshu lakshita svatmanahari drishyar budhyadi birdrasta lakshanar anumapakai. The personality of Godhead, Lord Sri Krishna, is in every living being, along with the individual soul. And this fact is perceived and hypothesized in our acts of seeing and taking help from the intelligence. Purport. The general argument of a common man is that since the Lord is not visible to our eyes, how can one either surrender unto him or render transcendental loving service unto him? To such a common man, there is a practical suggestion given by Srila Sukadeva Goswami as to how one can perceive the Supreme Lord by reason and perception. Actually, the Lord is not perceivable by our present materialized senses, but when one is convinced of the presence of the Lord by practical service attitude, there is revelation by the Lord's mercy, and such a pure devotee of the Lord can perceive the Lord's presence always and everywhere. He can perceive that intelligence is the form direction of the Paramatma plenary portion of the personality of Godhead. The presence of Paramatma in everyone's company is not very difficult to realize, even for the common man. The procedure is as follows. One can perceive one's self-identification and feel positively that he exists. He may not feel it very abruptly, but by using a little intelligence, he can feel that he is not the body. He can feel that the hand, the leg, the head, and the hair are the limbs, and the limbs are all his bodily parts and parcels. But as such, the hand, the leg, and the head, etc., cannot be identified with his self. Therefore, just by using intelligence, he can distinguish and separate his self from other things that he sees. So the natural conclusion is that the living being, either man or beast, is the seer, and he sees besides himself all other things. So there is a difference between the seer and the seen. Now, by a little use of the intelligence, we can also readily agree that living being who sees the things beyond himself by ordinary vision has no power to see or to move independently. All our ordinary actions and perceptions depend on various forms of energy supplied to us by nature in various combinations. Our senses of perception and of action, that is to say, our 5 perceptive senses of 1 hearing, 2 touch, 3 sight, 4 taste, and 5 smell, as well as our 5 senses of actions, namely 1 hands, 2 legs, 3 speech, 4 evacuation organs, and 5 reproductive organs. And also our 3 subtle senses, namely 1 mind, 2 intelligence, and 3 ego. 13 senses in all are supplied to us by various arrangements of gross or subtle forms of natural energy. And it is equally evident that our objects of perception are nothing but the products of the inexhaustible permutations and combinations of the forms taken by natural energy. This is conclusively proving that the ordinary living being has no independent power of perception or of motion, and as we undoubtedly feel our existence being conditioned by nature's energy, we conclude that he who sees is spirit, and that the senses, as well as the objects of perception, are material. The spiritual quality of the seer is manifest in our dissatisfaction with the limited state of materially conditioned existence. That is the difference between spirit and matter. There are some less intelligent arguments that matter develops the power of seeing and moving as a certain organic development. But such an argument cannot be accepted because there is no experimental evidence that matter has anywhere produced a living entity. Trust no future, however pleasant. Idle talks regarding future development of matter into spirit are actually foolish because no matter has ever developed the power of seeing or moving in any part of the world. Therefore, it is definite that matter and spirit are 2 different identities, and thus the conclusion is arrived at by the use of intelligence. Now we come to a point that the things which are seen by a little use of intelligence cannot be animate unless we accept someone as the user or director of the intelligence. Intelligence gives one direction like some higher authority, and the living being cannot see or move or eat or do anything without the use of intelligence. When one fails to take advantage of intelligence, he becomes a deranged man, and so living being is dependent on intelligence or the direction of superior being. Such intelligence is all-pervading. Every living being has his intelligence, and this intelligence, being the direction of some higher authority, is just like a father giving direction to his son. The higher authority who is present and residing within every individual living being is the super self. At this point in our investigation, we may consider the following question. On the one hand, we realize that all our perceptions and activities are conditioned by arrangements of material nature, yet we also ordinarily feel and say, I am perceiving, or I am doing. Therefore, we can say that our material senses of perception and action are moving, because we are identifying the self with the material body, and that the superior principle of super self is guiding and supplying us according to our desire. By taking advantage of the guidance of superself in the form of intelligence, we can either continue to study and to put into practice our conclusion that I am not this body, or we can choose to remain in the false material identification, fancying ourselves to be the possessors and doers. Our freedom consists in orienting our desire either toward the ignorant material misconception or the true spiritual conception. We can easily attain to the true spiritual conception by recognizing the superself, Paramatma, to be our friend and guide, and by dovetailing our intelligence with the superior intelligence of Paramatma. The superself and the individual self are both spirit, and therefore the superself and individual self are both qualitatively one and distinct from matter. But the superself and the individual self cannot be on an equal level because the superself gives direction or supplies intelligence to the individual self following the direction, and thus actions are performed properly. The individual is completely dependent on the direction of the superself, because in every step the individual self follows the direction of the superself in the matter of seeing, hearing, thinking, feeling, and willing, etc. So far as common sense is concerned, we come to the conclusion that there are three identities, namely matter, spirit, and superspirit. Now, if we go to Bhagavad Gita or the Vedic intelligence, we can further understand that all three identities, namely matter, individual spirit, and superspirit, are all dependent on the Supreme Personality of Godhead. The super self is a partial representation or plenary portion of the Supreme Personality of Godhead. The Bhagavad Gita affirms that the Supreme Personality of Godhead dominates all over the material world by his partial representation only. God is great, and he cannot be simply an order supplier of the individual selves. Therefore, super self cannot be a full representation of the Supreme Self, Purushottam, the absolute personality of Godhead. Realization of the super self by the individual self is the beginning of self-realization, and by progress of such self-realization, one is able to realize the Supreme Personality of Godhead by intelligence, by the help of authorized scriptures, and principally by the grace of the Lord. Bhagavad Gita is the preliminary conception of the personality of Godhead, Sri Krishna, and Srimad Bhagavatam is the further explanation of the science of Godhead. So if we stick to our determination and pray for the mercy of the director of intelligence sitting within the same bodily tree, like a bird sitting with another bird, as explained in the Upanishads, certainly the purport of the revealed information in the Vedas becomes clear to our vision, and there is no difficulty in realizing the Supreme Personality of Godhead, Vasudeva. The intelligent man, therefore, after many births of such use of intelligence, surrenders himself at the lotus feet of Vasudeva, as confirmed in Bhagavad Gita 7.19. Thus ends our reading for today. We will continue from text 36 on Friday, hopefully. All glories to Om Vishnupad Paramahamsa Shripad Bhakti Madhava Puri Maharaj Ki Jai. Jai Srila Prabhupada, Srila Guru Maharaj, Srila Guru Dev, Srila Acharya Dev, Srila Shanta Maharaj Ki Jai. All glories to Arupa Nuga Guru Varga Ki Jai. Jai Navadvip Dham Ki Jai, Jai Mayapur Dham Ki Jai, Jai Nrishingapali Dham Ki Jai, Jai Jagannath Puri Dham Ki Jai, Baladev Subhadra Jagannath Jew Ki Jai. Jai Vrindavan Dham Ki Jai, Giri Govardhan Gupta Govardhan Dham Ki Jai. Shamkund Radhakund Ki Jai, Tulsi Devi Bhakti Devi Vrinda Devi Ki Jai. All glories to the assembled devotees, all glories to the worldwide devotees, Bhakta Vrinda Ki Jai. Nitai Gaur Pramanandi, Hari 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 Bol. Dandava Pranams.